Okay. Hello and welcome to this podcast series, Day in the Life of an Actuary, brought to you by the Monash Actuary Student Society. And just a little disclaimer before we start, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers only and do not necessarily reflect the views of Monash University or our sponsor firms.
This episode is part of a podcast series where we'll be sitting down and having conversations with representatives from our sponsor firms to give you, our actuarial student members, insights on many important topics, from university experience, internship and graduate applications to the actuarial industry and work of an actuary.
My name is Scott and I'm the Events Director of MAS in 2020.
I'm Hazel and I'm the Media and Communications Officer of MAS. And today, for the 5th podcast episode, we are delighted to be joined by Jason Tang and Michael Kaboukos, Actuarial Analysts from AIA.
So to start off,
Guys.
how are we going? So to start off, Jason and Michael, why don't you give us an introduction about yourselves for our student members who want to know more about you guys?
Yep. So hi everyone. My name is Jason. I've worked in AIA for close to around 2 years now as a graduate actuarial analyst. So I started in management reporting before moving into New Zealand valuation. And now I've recently started in the Australian retail pricing team. So I graduated in 2018 with a Bachelor of Commerce and I majored in actuarial studies as well as econometrics. So some hobbies of mine include traveling, food, as well as Netflix and video games. And just a fun fact about myself, I actually played the flute for 3 years during high school before realizing I have no musical talent at all.
That can't be true, that can't be true. You must have been all right, pretty good.
No, I was actually horrible at it. That's why I stopped.
Hey guys, I'm Michael Kaboukos. I've been at AIA for nearly 4 years now, having just finished the 3-year grad program. I'm currently applying my craft in the reinsurance team, and before that I've done some rotations in the valuation, actuarial systems, data analytics and operational risk management teams. Before I started at AIA, I was at Monash Uni, just like you guys, doing a Bachelor of Commerce, majoring in actuarial studies, and I also did a Bachelor of Engineering, majoring in mechanical engineering. When I'm not working and studying, I guess, I enjoy keeping fit, mainly going to the gym, which for me really aligns with AIA's vision of longer, healthier, and better lives. And on top of that, I think it's pretty necessary, when we do such a sedentary job. We're at our desks all day, so I need to get some exercise in. To counteract that, enjoy eating way too much food than what I probably should, which probably doesn't align with any of AIA's visions. But we can say it balances each other out. So outside of that, I love a good movie like Jason. I have seen the Harry Potter movies at least 5 times each, and enjoy a good video game as well. And for a bit of a fun fact, I was a pretty keen actor when I was in high school. I actually did theatre studies as a VCE subject in between all the maths and science subjects. But I only got a study score of 28 for that. So I think I probably thought I was a bit better than what I actually was.
That's so fantastic. So what were your university years like? Like any favorite memories from your time at university?
I think, speaking on behalf of myself and also Michael, we had quite an interesting path leading up to, I guess, where we are right now. So as for me, I actually first started university with actually studying a double degree between Biomed and Commerce. And Commerce was definitely something that was a bit on the back burner for me. And I did that for around 1.5 years before deciding to switch to Commerce and Actuarial full-time. It was actually quite funny at the time because a lot of people would comment why I'll switch from something that was hard already to something that's arguably even harder. But I think it was just a realization that Biomed really wasn't for me. And I realized I'm like, okay, I need to make a change. So I just completely dropped it and did something different. And I think my memories of my uni years were definitely related to the difficulty around actuarial as well. So my memories were just really struggling to try to get past that exemption mark. But I think the silver lining amongst all of that was really just, I got to meet a lot of people and I made a lot of good friends as well. And also after I switched into Commerce, I also did a lot of, I guess, extracurricular activity outside of uni. So I volunteered in a lot of local op shops, participated in a lot of different events, And for quite a while, I was also a volunteer tutor for people with intellectual disabilities.
Yeah, volunteering is really important in the UK. What about you, Michael?
Look, I'll be honest, I lived 5 minutes away from Monash campus in Clayton, and I barely rocked up to uni unless I had to for tests, exams, or where they mark attendance. So a little bit lazy. Never joined any clubs, unfortunately, but I regret that now, having joined a lot of the mass networking events and other events. See how much fun you guys have. I probably should have joined. Basically, during my uni years, I studied, played a lot of sports, and spent a lot of time with my friends from high school who are still my best friends today. And I worked a lot also to save money up and travel. That was something I really wanted to do. That took me on 3 pretty big trips in my uni years, twice around Europe and then once to Japan at the end of my final year. And obviously to save that money, I had to work. So I spent 5 years working at a petrol station, selling petrol, and probably eating a few too many Freddo frogs and leftover sausage rolls. I didn't get an internship in my uni years, but in terms, I found that trying to tell a line of customers at 5:30 p.m. that the FPOS machine is not working and they can't go home unless they take out cash at the ATM. I found that was a pretty good way to develop some stakeholder management and communication skills, which is incredibly vital to our work as an actuary. So, look, I didn't get an internship, but I got where I wanted to be anyway. So,
That's fantastic to hear. So, looking back on university life, not including just what you did in uni, obviously, everything around that period of your life. So, how did these experiences help you succeed in the competitive graduate role application process?
Yep. So I guess for myself, through all my experience, especially around my volunteering opportunities, I think the most important skill that I've learned was definitely communication. So I think definitely as actuaries or actuarial student, we're all very, very smart. This is why we're doing the course that we are doing right now. So there must be some other factor that kind of differentiates yourself from everyone else. So I guess through all my different volunteering experiences, I had to talk to a lot of different people from different backgrounds. And that really taught me how to, I guess, communicate more effectively and build up relationships quickly with just different people. And also on the side, it also taught me a lot about myself and help identify like my strengths and my weaknesses. And that really helped build myself into kind of like a more complete person.
I think for me, look, outside of the theory that we learn at uni, it was mainly similar to Jason, communication and social skills. I really enjoy talking and, not my laptop. I really enjoy talking and connecting with people, and being part of teams in competitive sports helped me also to develop those skills, but also showed drive and determination and work ethic to do that while studying and working as well. So that was my sort of differentiator. I think traveling and learning about different cultures for me was a real advantage because I could highlight that as part of my application. I'm obviously of European background, but I realized sort of how Aussie I really am when I actually went over to Europe. And that sort of opened my views quite a lot. I then, as I mentioned, went to Japan. So completely different culture, learned about their culture and ate all their food, obviously. It's fantastic. Now I'm at AIA with a lot of people who are of very different backgrounds. Our group office is in Hong Kong. So, I learn about their culture, and that really helps me to work well with a wide range of people, communicate with those people, and make connections with the people that I work with.
Yeah, this is obvious that networking and connecting with more people can broaden your horizon. So why actuarial science and what interests you about becoming an actuary?
Yeah, I'll jump on this one. For me, it was really the skill set of an actuary. I feel that through our training, our education, we're so well equipped to tackle many of the biggest issues that have impacted, will impact the world, both now and in the future. So, for some examples, you think about we've got aging populations. How do we manage pensions or superannuation for those aging populations? There's a huge rise in household debt around the world, especially in Australia, and the need for protection against those losses. And there comes in life insurance and general insurance. And then you think about, the massive increase in data availability And that really brings a need for expertise to bridge the gap between what you see as the pure numbers and the story that an everyday person can understand who doesn't have data or actuarial skills that we do. And we need to bridge that gap. We've got the skills to bridge that gap. So in this world, for me, it's grown exponentially more and more complex. So many arrays of interconnected risks that need to be managed. And when you look at the skill set of an actuary, I personally feel that we're so well placed to help out in tackling these ever-growing issues and make a real difference in the world. So, for me, that was what really attracted me to the profession.
Yeah, and also just building on to Michael's point, I think definitely the actual course also teaches us a very, I guess, wide variety of different kinds of broad and transferable skill sets. So a lot of actuaries you see not only work in life insurance, we work across a range of different industries. So definitely being an actuary offers quite a lot of flexibility, and I guess that's also something that I'm after in my career. And I guess for me, how I first heard about Actuarial is really through word of mouth, because I guess the conversation always revolves around like, oh, actuaries, they get such a high pay, they receive such a high salary. But I guess what really attracted me was actually just the reputation of actuaries. So as Michael said, we have a broad skill set, we're very valued. And also, we're just a very old and established profession. So we're quite globally recognized. And that's also something that I'm after, is just that kind of global recognition.
Yeah, that's very interesting to hear. And obviously, with your passion and interest being an actuary, how did you find yourself at AIA, and why did you apply there? And overall, how did you end up making the decision to, start working at AIA?
Yeah. So for me, it was actually it's actually quite funny, because AIA has actually always just kind of been that brand that stuck with me since childhood. So as a kid, my parents actually have bought me an AIA product before, and that product was designed to actually pay for my school fees up until I turned 18. So I guess something that kind of stuck out with me is that every single year they would actually send me, I think, like birthday cards or something like that. But I guess that made it kind of like a brand that kind of like resonated with me. And I guess it all came full circle now that I'm actually working for AIA. But outside of that, AIA is also kind of like is also a large international brand. And so we are one of the largest life insurers in the world, but we're also the second largest life insurer in Australia. So I guess with this size, I also get really wide exposure to different aspects of the life insurance business. So every day at work is always quite different and quite interesting. And I'm also attracted by the prospects of being relocated internationally, since AIA does provide those opportunities.
For me, look, I didn't have the product, unfortunately, to pay for my school fees, but I was drawn to AIA because their vision really aligns with my own values, which is a real focus on health. And at AIA, the mission is for longer, healthier, and better lives. And domestically, it's to make Australia and New Zealand the healthiest, most protected nations in the world. So, for me, I've always been a big sports fan. And I knew the AIA brand, mainly from the sponsorship of Tottenham Hotspur, one of the biggest football clubs in England and the world. Probably, for a bit of disclosure, I'm not going to pretend I am a Tottenham fan, but I'm actually a Liverpool supporter. And when we beat Tottenham last year in the Champions League, I actually paraded around the office in my Liverpool shirt, while there were all these framed Tottenham shirts on the walls. And that didn't really sit very well, but it's all fun and games, I guess, till someone hurts me. And that sponsorship now is it's domestically, we've got sponsorships and partnerships with the North Melbourne Football Club now. It's just recently been announced, and a couple A-League clubs as well. So for a young kid that grew up playing, watching footy and soccer, always keeping fit, AA is a place where not only can I apply the technical and the professional skills that I've developed through study, but I can contribute to a much broader vision that I'm fully on board with.
Sounds like AIA is like a dream workplace for everyone. Can you tell us what an average day is like for you there?
Yep. Well, I'm in a reinsurance at the moment. So managing reinsurance within a direct insurer, there's no real set routine, except probably coffee time. but the work is pretty project based. So I can be slapped with anything at any moment really. And for me, I enjoy that unpredictability and that lack of routine. I think just how I am personally, if I had too much routine, I might get a little bit bored. So what I do really fits my personality type. In terms of the details on the work that we do, it can vary. So for me, there can be, preparing analysis to support negotiations for reinsurer price changes. Obviously, that one's always fun because the direct insurer is going to want a lower price and the reinsurer is going to want a higher price. So there's a lot of sort of push and shove that goes on there. Analysis to support potential changes for, say, reinsurance coverages or retentions if we want to reduce or increase our use of reinsurance to change maybe our profit and risk exposure on a book. And you need to sort of balance that with capital costs and need to assess that in line with the company's risk appetite. So there's a lot of different stakeholders in there outside of just doing the analysis. And so you need to be able to sort of manage the interests of those different stakeholders. And then something completely different. I've had a lot of fun with some more remediation projects. As you know, with banks and insurers, there's a lot of remediation going on at the moment, where I've had to use data analytics skills to build programs in R, basically to attempt to replicate what our policy admin systems do, and then modify that to maybe amend an error on millions of rows of policy data to figure out the cost of the error, particularly where it's impacted our insurers, because that's obviously my interest, through the premiums that we pay them or the claims that they pay us. So, I mean, in terms of the work that I do, as you can probably tell, touches on so many different areas, whether it's the more traditional pricing or valuation, data analytics type work, to more high-level activities like internal, external stakeholder management, giving presentations and being, I guess at the moment, a small part of negotiations. So for me, I'm quite a generalist, so that really suits me.
Yeah. So I guess I'll talk about when I was in New Zealand valuation. So my work around when I was in New Zealand valuation was a bit more technical. So my work revolved around really just producing and monitoring the financials for our New Zealand branch. So my experience is quite the opposite of Michael in reinsurance. So we actually had a fixed timeline of monthly deliverables. So normally how I would start my day is really can't start my day without my morning cup of coffee. And after that, I would always we would always have a quick team huddle just to kind of talk through our priorities for the day. Not gonna lie, we were really busy to meet our deliverables. So I think one of the most important skills that I've actually learned out of that team is really just around time management. So before I start my day, I will normally always just kind of jot down what I need to get done by in that day. And at the end of the day, I would always just wrap up and just take a note of what I have done and what I need to get done tomorrow. So we were actually quite a small team of 4 people. So I was really, really autonomous as we were all really held responsible for our own work. But outside of that, we also do have, especially during this, I think, COVID period, my managers have provided an extra level of flexibility. So we could start later, or I could take longer breaks, as long as I get the work that is required just to get that all done within the day.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds like, there's a bit of flexibility depending on what stream you're in or which area you're working, whether you want that kind of fixed schedule or more of a flexible one. But one thing that's always consistent is the coffee breaks. So what are some of the most exciting projects you're currently maybe working on now, or some projects that you worked on in the past in AIA that's really interested you?
Yeah. So for this question, I'll let Michael lead the charge. He's like an old man now among the grads. He has 4 years, I only have 2, so I'll let him take over for this.
We have a running joke. Every year you go from like the child to the father to the grandfather. I think I'm like great-great-grandfather now. So old man. So I think I mentioned a couple items earlier, but if I'm going to channel on one in particular for me as being the most exciting, obviously without giving away too much confidential info, but basically is the first time I was involved in a really large-scale negotiation within the reinsurance team. So before we even got to the negotiation table, there was a whole heap of work that had to be done to put a case together and for the terms that we thought were ideal for this transaction. And for my role in this, I had to apply a lot of, I did a lot of adjustments to our profit valuation model to reflect particular terms that had become a part of the discussions, but weren't things that we'd ever modeled in the company before. So, going back then to my second year of the grad program, I spent 6 months in the actuarial systems team, which manages the valuation models and runs the monthly valuations. And so from that time, I was quite well placed to do this particular piece of work where I had to basically modify that model. So I got to do what every young actuary loves to do once they touch a model, and that's to hack the model and get it to do what I want it to do and get the results that we needed. And then another part followed on from this where we thought it would be best to use our pricing model to do this particular part. So I got to hack that one too. And I had no previous experience with that. So I had to learn it and then hack it. So that was probably even more exciting. And then, this one kind of had me working like the stereotypical, you see the data scientists in the movies. They got the black screen with the coding in the background. They've got the Red Bull next to their desk. They're up till 3 a.m. It wasn't up to 3 a.m., but that was me. So we had to do that, and then we could start the negotiations. So then moving to the negotiation, after doing all the analytical work, to see how the numbers and the story or the picture that I put together through the analytical work translated to and I guess impacted the outcomes of something that would affect quite a lot of the business and its performance was really exciting for me as a grad, because I was at the combination of my years in the grad program. So for me, it was this is everything I've kind of learned in the last 2.5, 3 years packaged into one thing. And then I guess, having looked forward from that, it showed me also that as important as the numbers and the analysis are in a commercial business scenario, there's a whole other world of skills like negotiation skills, stakeholder management skills, project management skills that I hadn't even scratched the surface of. So for me, that was like seeing all these doors just lined up in front of me and knowing that there's so much I can learn and experience behind each one. And so I got really excited about that runway for growth. So for me, that's really been the standout piece of work for me so far.
I guess you aced that.
I mean, Jason, yourself, I know you said you haven't had that much experience, been only working for 2 years, but I'm sure there's something that maybe came across your mind, an interesting project.
You're putting me on the spot now, Scott.
Well, have a little bit of think, maybe something that just like pops up in your mind that when you think of an interesting project.
Yeah. So I guess with my first team in manager reporting, one of the big tasks I had to do was actually I had to do an expense survey within the company. So normally that's required for setting different assumptions. So for all you people out there who's currently studying contingencies, you know that there is that expense loading within that big premium formula. So so one of the biggest projects that I had to work on was really just to do an expense survey and just prepare that assumption. So same thing with Michael, there was a lot of different stakeholder management. So I had to work with accountants to get the expenses. But aside that, I also had to go and talk to each different department actually to see how they allocate their expenses as well. So on the soft skill side, I guess there was that big component with just trying to gather data from different people. But my manager also completely gave me free reign over this task. So she allowed me to build the entire model and the process myself as well. So that side also involved a lot of different, I guess, technical skills, just working with Excel and working with all these different programs to try and build together a model to produce kind of like a workable spreadsheet that will produce that expense loading. So I think that was really the highlight of my task, just because of, I guess, the broad nature of this task that I had to go out and talk to different people, and there's also different technical aspects of it. And it was also just, I was also fully responsible for it. So that was quite an interesting experience. And I feel like definitely I learned a lot about different technical skills and just even help develop my soft skills through that task.
Sounds like a very interesting project. So what are the tools and technical skills you have had to use for your job?
Yeah. So yeah, as I just kind of said, and building on to what Michael said as well. So we do mainly use Excel for our work. However, we do also get exposure to other software such as R, SQL, and VBA. We also have some other programs that's a bit, I guess, unique to life insurance. So we have a software called Profit, which houses our more complex cash flow models. I think one thing that I also like to note that with all these technical skills, as an actuary, it's also really important that we do communicate our findings. So there are some soft skills involved, such as just communicating your findings to our managers, email etiquette, as well as just trying to influence with your results. And I think especially during COVID, effective communication has become something that's super important because there is that extra barrier that we're not physically there anymore. So communication does become a bit more difficult.
I think to build on what Jason said, I mean, in terms of software skills, programming skills, you mentioned Excel, and the only thing I'm going to throw in is basically I hope we can move towards killing the spreadsheet at some point. It's too inefficient. Let's move on. Let's learn our coding skills and build better systems and more efficient systems to work through. And hopefully the industry is moving in that direction. In terms of sort of industry knowledge, for me working in reinsurance, I do need to have a decent grasp on the APRA regulations. So reporting, capital calcs, identifying where we might need formal reports and advice, because some of the things that we work on can have quite material financial impacts. And then another thing for me would be movements in the industry, because these are going to drive a lot of the work that you do. So for example, I think probably the most recent and probably the largest one is APRA's review of income protection products, which has basically seen almost every life insurer have to revamp most of their IP product line. And obviously, in terms of what's been out in the media, you've got the Royal Commission, and that's going to create a lot of work for a lot of people as well. So being aware of those has really helped me. In terms of communication, I think I mentioned a little bit, but time management for me, I think was always a bit of a weakness because I generally just winged everything and never planned anything out. Uni was never planned. It just, whatever I have to do, I'll do it. That's it. So just winged it and it worked out. It doesn't work out anymore. I don't have enough hours in the day to get everything right. So have to do a little bit better on the time management. So to do that, I recently got a mentor at work to help me develop in the areas that I am lacking, which were like planning and time management. And I really had the structures in place for me to reach out, get that arranged. And that has made huge improvements for me.
Sounds good. A lot of professional development even as you're working. As a bit of a follow-up question to that as well, I wanted to know a little bit more about these technical skills, like the software skills you're talking about, like Excel and R and things. When you graduated, how proficient were you at those skills? And like since then, like how have you improved your skills since then?
Yeah, so that's actually quite a good question, Scott. I think it is quite difficult for a student to kind of gain these skills. So of course, for the technical side, I think the softwares that you do touch on in your uni course, so I've touched on a lot of Excel, I've also touched on R. Those definitely do help in the workplace, but a big part of it is also on the job learning. So for example, different in-house software such as Profit or SQL, those softwares you don't really touch on at uni. So that's more you have to learn on the job. And as for soft skills, it is a bit harder. So for me, I guess it was through all just my volunteering experiences that I can kind of practice my communication skills. But I think in general, for myself and for any students, self-awareness really goes a long way. So I'm just kind of taking note of the way you communicate and the way you work together in group assignments really does help you develop in that aspect.
Yeah, look, I had no idea how to code in R when I finished uni. R had kind of come in just after I graduated. And so obviously a couple of years older than Jace, I'd missed out on that. So the R assignments that you guys get now, didn't get them. And then Excel, like I barely knew how to do a VLOOKUP when I finished uni. I feel like the key really is being able to learn. And when it comes to these technical skills, man, there's so many websites out there you can learn how to do this stuff on. I think I use Stack Overflow, like probably search on it about 5 times a day. So it's there to be learned, and you can learn it pretty quickly on the job.
Definitely agree.
That's good to hear. So this continued development, professional development, even after university, you're always learning. That's really good to hear. So about the work culture, what's the work culture like at AIA, and I guess how does that help you like even develop yourself even further, as you guys say?
Yeah. So yeah, regarding our work culture, I know it's a bit cliched, but we do have a work culture of kind of like the work hard, play hard mentality. So even though we are the second largest life insurer in Australia, we are quite busy because we are still growing. So we often have multiple different tasks going on at the same time. However, we remain a close-knit family. So whenever we take on tasks, there's always a sense of teamwork and support. So on the tasks that I've done, I've never really felt left out. And during the pre-COVID time as well, we do often have different events going on. So we do have a social club, and they do often organize things like afternoon teas, raffles, etc. And I think one thing that really stood out with me in my first team manager reporting is that every single Friday afternoon, we'd always end Fridays with just drinks and snacks in the office to just kind of ease ourselves into weekend. So that was something that really stood out and was really quite nice.
Yeah, in the same boat as Jason. Really missing those Friday afternoon drinks at the local beer garden at the moment, and social club's always good as well. It's a great place to be around. Everyone's really friendly. I'm quite sociable, I like to think anyway. So I kind of just walk up to people and how you going? Haven't seen you in a while. It's that sort of culture where everyone's really open, really friendly, and available to talk at any time. And that comes down from the top because our leaders are like that. So that culture is built within the company. It doesn't start from us. We just fit into it really well. So yeah, the culture is fantastic, and trying to keep it going through COVID. Obviously, it's not as easy when you're not physically in the office, but we'll work on it.
Yeah, I still remember in 2018, I had a information workshop in Monash, and I still remember like you introduced the badminton social club thing. So interesting.
Yeah.
You guys stay really active.
Yeah, unfortunately that can't keep going given what's going on, what's happening right now, but hopefully it comes back after this all ends.
Maybe you guys can invent like virtual badminton or something that we can still do it.
There's some badminton games online actually.
Oh, there you go.
If you want to get out.
So how do you go about different stages of the application process? Like any tips that you wish to advise our student members on this topic?
Yeah, Jace, you can go first. It's been a while for me. I can't really remember too much.
Yeah, Michael's the grandpa here. His memory's probably not that great anymore. But so for our hiring process, we do have an initial screening of the applicant's CV and cover letter before moving to a telephone interview, and then finally a final interview and with a case study as well. So for me, before I even began the interview stage, I did a lot of research on AIA and just kind of thought about how, I guess, my values align with AIA, and in terms of my skill set, what I can bring to the company. So that involved really about thinking about my learnings from university and what like the kind of lessons that I've learned from my experience outside of university as well, and how I can translate those skills into the workplace. As for the interview, I think I speak on behalf of everyone. It's quite awkward. It's quite a natural thing to kind of just to talk about yourself, but I think practice really makes perfect. So I think just for me, I just kept practicing, and that really helps to kind of build up your confidence and really helps express your ideas a bit more clearly when the time actually comes for the interview. And lastly, for the case study, that still haunts me to this day. So essentially what that is, it's you have a one-day time frame and you have to prepare a report and present it to senior managers. So back when I did it, I actually present to our appointed actuary as well as another senior manager. And honestly, it was terrifying. It was really, really scary. But I think the most important consideration in that step is really just to kind of step yourself into the shoes of a professional. So there won't be any incorrect answers as long as you justify yourself.
I think probably just to build off Jason's comments was probably two things, the most important things: research and practice. Probably try to avoid just sort of repeating the mission statement of a company. Maybe read its reports and try to identify some of the key issues that management may be grasping with. For interviews, definitely do trial interviews. Get together with friends, do some trial interviews, or do it in front of a mirror if that works as well. But the key is really to make sure that you know how to respond concisely and confidently to as many questions as you can in the best way possible, which makes it sound a little bit like you're preparing for an exam. So kind of treat it like an open-ended exam, because essentially it is an interview is an examination of yourself. And finally, I think just be yourself as well. It's important that you present yourself as someone that people want to work with. So I think don't be afraid to not be 100% serious, but you want the interviewer to feel comfortable with you as well, not just the other way around. So as you can tell, there's a bit of a balance there. I think it's a little bit of an art, and that's why practice is really, really important.
Balance of practice, bit of confidence, and just having a bit of a light conversation with the interviewer, keeping it light. So some employers have highlighted that knowledge about the industry is something really important and something often that university students kind of lack. So, and you were highlighting before the importance of that industry knowledge. So how would you, what advice would you give to students who want to improve this knowledge, and what sources would you recommend?
So that's actually a really good question, Scott. And I think personally for me as well, while during that period where I was a student, it was quite difficult to gain that industry knowledge. So I think for currently the students who are studying actuarial control cycle in your part 2s or the new actuarial program, I think that's a very good subject where you do actually learn about how the industry works. But for undergrad students, it is a bit tougher because you don't really get that exposure to that subject. So I think really for undergrad students is really just kind of keep an eye out on the news and just kind of stay in touch with what's going on in the industry. I think that really helps.
Yeah, I think very similar for me. I didn't come in with any part 2s done. So I'd only done a few part 1s, I think 3 or 4 of them. So I had to do a lot of them in the first year, which means I only used the technical skills. I didn't really know much industry knowledge. So the way to build on that would be, there's newsletters you can sign up to from Actuaries Institute, APRA, ASIC, FSC, reinsurers all have their own newsletters as well. And you can read reports as well, like annual financial reports to shareholders. For example, AIA is overseas, so our group office has their own annual reports and shareholder conferences. So you can tune into those, get an idea of key issues going on in the industry domestically or around the world. There's just a stack of resources there, and you can even just talk to people like networking events and the like that. So.
That's a very useful advice for us. So what are some exciting changes happening right now to the typical workplace of an actuary that you have noticed?
So I guess I can start on that. Michael will add on some points later, but I think everyone is aware of the increasing use of kind of like automation and machine learning techniques in the kind of the traditional area of actuaries. So for AIA, we do currently have a data analytics team, which does do deep dives into kind of investigation to our experiences. But outside of the actual space, we also do have an AI and automation team, as well as business intelligence. So these teams are a bit less typical actuarial, but I've known of actuaries who have worked there. So there is definitely kind of like an actuarial influence within those teams.
I really think this one's a great question. because it paints a runway for where we may be headed in the next few years. And if I touch on probably the automation and machine learning trends that are going on, the movements, it has nothing to do with there being robots running around the office, but it's more actuaries are and will increasingly be able to put together stories behind the numbers at various levels of detail. And these technologies will really help us, really support us to do that. So you look at machine learning, and it already has allowed us to gather insights that we never could on a spreadsheet, hence kill the spreadsheet. And automation, allows us to do our number crunching and data prep so much faster. You put those two together, and what I see anyway is actuaries being able to deliver the key insights and paint pictures, for management, for the board, that we couldn't before, because we didn't have that information at that granularity, and we had much less time, or we had the same amount of time, but it took us more time to put the numbers together. So machine learning and automation, for me, really provides solutions for that. And I think probably the other key thing is a non-traditional areas. Actuaries going into non-traditional areas. For me, I worked in data analytics for a bit within my grad program, and I also worked in the operational risk team, which is a completely different thing. So these are very non-traditional areas, but when you get in there and you see how your skill set as an actuary can really complement these non-traditional areas that are not valuation or pricing, you really start to see why the movement makes a lot of sense, why actuaries are moving into non-traditional areas. And that is because our skill set, it's so transferable. We're so well versed in so many different areas that it just makes a lot of sense.
So technology is like broaden our view, and then our perspective can also help to broaden views in other areas, in other industries. So final question, lastly, any valuable advice that you wish to pass on to your fellow actuarial students currently in university, and how would you make the most out of the time in university?
So I guess some final words from me is really just to, for all the students out there, really make the most out of your university years. So from my personal experience, I guess, changing degrees and doing all these things outside of uni as well, I think it's really important just to follow your passions, because at the end of the day, when you do interview for a workplace or go work in a company, they do really want to see the real you. So I think it's really important that you do stick with your passions. And the experience that you get doesn't necessarily have to be actuarial. I think what's more important is really just to put yourself out there first and really learn and really understand how those lessons that you've learned from those experiences can be translated into practice. And lastly, but most importantly, is really just don't be afraid of failure. Embrace it as an opportunity to really learn and improve. So for me, especially during my uni time, I've had a lot of different tough moments, whether it be studies or whether it be job applications. But at the end of the day, any failure is just a valuable learning experience. So I think that's my general advice to uni students.
Yeah, I 100% agree, Jace. If I'm going to add to that, it's probably keep in mind, at least I believe anyway, that the sky is really the limit with the skill set that we have. And I think I've touched on this actuarial skill set a number of times now. And really, sky's the limit with it. And transitioning from uni to work, it's tough. Uni is tough. And the learning curve, once you get into the workplace, it is really, really steep. But keeping in mind, I think, the bigger picture and what you can achieve and the difference that you can make in the long run is really crucial to this journey that you're on, from uni to the workplace, and then to whatever your career holds after that. Where we're equipped to solve so many issues with our capabilities and make such a difference in the world. I think if you really approach all your challenges that you will face with a growth and learning mindset, so you can keep improving and developing, I call it like your arsenal of tools and your capabilities, you can use that to make a real difference. And ultimately, that'll give you purpose. and allow you to make the most of what is really a not just challenging, but extremely rewarding journey that we're all on. So I think keep in mind the big picture and what you can achieve.
That sounds very, very useful, and like it's really helpful for the students right now to practice on the experience, practical skills. So thank you so much, Jason and Michael, for the interesting conversation we just had, especially during a busy time like this. And thank you to our audience for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and were able to learn from the valuable advice that Jason and Michael have shared.
Yeah, definitely a big thank you.
Thank you for having us, guys.
Yeah, definitely a big thank you to both Jason and Michael from AIA. It was a very interesting conversation, very eye-opening for myself, and I'm sure many of our student members will feel the same way, and I'm sure they've learned a lot from the conversation we had today. And we hope to see you at future events once COVID's all over and we can actually, get together physically and have, meet and have a good time.
In the future mass events.
Yeah, future mass events.
Looking forward to that.
Especially the poker night. Love that.
I too.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Thank you all.